Consciously going into cold water is the optimal way to really see a shift in a person's belief system.
They've overcome what they believed they could do.
It's a real metaphor for life. Every day I stand in that tank up to my knees. I have to override the do not sit down. Do not sit down. No, I'm just going to sit down, and I sit down in the tank. You've proven to yourself that you can feel resistance or fear or worry and still do something anyway.
The conscious adversity is empowering as an experience for us.
Every day I prove to myself that I am driving the ship.
Welcome to the Authentic Man podcast. I am your host, David Chambers. This is a podcast for men who want more and less from life. More deep connection, more emotional intelligence, more self-awareness, and more great sex. And less heartache, less conflict, less overthinking, and less stress. Creating dating lives, sex lives, and relationships that are incredible and authentic. My deepest goal is that you, the listener, can take away what you hear in this podcast and apply it to your life so that you can experience greater happiness, transformational growth, deeper relationships, and profound sexual intimacy. I believe that as men, we are capable of so much more depth than we are shown or led to believe. So join me as we get deep into this.
Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Man podcast. I am your host, David Chambers. And today we get into a topic that I've wanted to talk about for a while. I haven't been able to, found someone to get into it. It's really talking about the cold. We do a lot of conversation about cold water immersion, cold water therapy, whatever you want to call it, and the benefits of that. Not just the physical benefits in terms of, health and so forth, but also in terms of our connection. The connection benefits, the benefits to the mind, the benefits to our resilience, the benefits to our mindset as well, like how we feel our ability to do difficult things and move past difficult experiences. We get quite a lot into that as well as, how the cold can help you overcome fear, how it helps people build confidence. We also talk about with my wonderful guest, Ryan, who is an expert in working with the cold water, as well as breath, as well as embodiment, and movement. That he does a lot of work with that, retreats and workshops as well, which you can find all the details in the show notes to go to those. If you come to one of the ones in London, you may also find me there. And we talk about how bringing those together, the breath, the cold, the sauna as well, how that can create transformation for people, how that takes people deeper into themselves, creates experiences of deeper experience of consciousness and presence. Actually, we have quite a long piece where we talk about the power of presence and what that does for someone's life when they've experienced that deeper presence that comes from the cold or comes from the breath or comes from the sauna, and how that impacts their lives positively going forward. And we talk about how we can build community. Ryan talks about his experience of building a community, as well as his experience of leading a community as well. And I know there's a lot of people want to step more into roles of leadership in their life. So we talk a decent piece at length about how we can step into leadership and how we can lead our communities. And also we talk about our fears around leading communities or leading in general, and how that can be influenced by our fathers and our caretakers, and how we can come into a balance that we can, bring the parts of us that we exiled off and bring that into our style of leadership, our style of being. So this is a really fantastic episode with a friend of mine, a man I've had wonderful pleasure of having long and beautiful and deep conversations with. So I'm not going to say anything else. I think I'll just let you jump into this one. Mind the pun. I'll let you jump into the episode. So listeners, back with another episode, and back with an episode that we haven't touched upon. We haven't talked about these topics and these, I don't know what we're going to talk about really, but I definitely know there's one part what we definitely will get into, and that's talking about cold water and its benefits. It's what it does to the body, what it does to the mind, what it does to our physiques and so forth. And I'm really happy to have a wonderful man who I've got to spend some time with and sit around with another group of wonderful men and talk about life, life, the things we struggle about, where we want to get to, and business as well. And he's a man who's very passionate about this work, passionate about community, passionate about people's health and people's mental health as well. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm good, mate. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on, and it's good to chat with you again. Yeah, it's it's just good to be here.
Yeah, last time we caught up, I think we were in a little cottage up in the Yorkshire Dales.
That's right. Yeah, trout farm. Yeah, we had infinite amount of fresh trout, didn't we, for our food?
We did get a lot of trout there.
Rescued a crane. Rescued 2 crane, actually, didn't we?
Yeah. Rescued 2 crane. Had a dip in the local stream, and even got a sauna in.
We did, yeah, a nice sauna in the field. So yeah, it's good, and plenty of chat amid all that as well.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. We won't tell the sauna story yet. But I'd love to start with actually.
Sorry. I was wondering which one you meant, but I was like, yeah, okay, that one.
I've always thought it'd be great to hear, how did you get into this work of working with cold water and breath and now the warm sauna?
I guess my journey, like this kind of journey anyway, started it's about 9 years ago, I would say. Just lost my dad, and struggling with how to maybe deal with that. It was 7 years ago. It was. I'd not long lost my dad. I'd just become a father, and I was struggling to deal with some of the things that life was presenting to me. The loss of my dad, becoming a dad. My son was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, and I started to realize that I didn't really know how to be the father that I wanted to be, the partner that I wanted to be, and really didn't even know how to grieve. So I signed up for a workshop with a company called Clearmind International, and I went on this workshop in Liverpool. A couple called Dwayne and Catherine who run it, and I didn't really know why I was there, to be honest with you. I'd kind of gone there because others had been there and said that it was great, and I was sat there wondering why I was there. And then people started to speak in the circle, and I realised that although we'd all encountered these different experiences in life, different types of struggles or trauma, that something really connected us all. There was so much similarity in us all, in the middle of the struggle. How it was affecting us was kind of the same. Some of us have maybe chosen to active addiction. Some of us have chosen to act out in all these different ways, but the story was very, very similar. And I started to realize that maybe that I had been affected by my past, by my childhood, my relationships, my parents and my family. And on that workshop, we did some breath work. And in this my first encounter ever of breath work, I'm just in this community centre in Liverpool, and I'm just told to lay down on the ground and just do this really activating breathing. And I just had this complete out of body experience. I felt like I was giving birth to something. It was quite a big experience that I had. And then off the back of that, I was like, whoa, what is this? What has just happened? I need to know more. And then from that, same thing happened the next day. We did a huge reenactment of my past. And again, I started to realize that there was more to learn. There was more to discover. It wasn't as straightforward, as in life wasn't as straightforward as I had first thought. And And yeah, from there, I kind of went in multiple different directions. The main one being learning more about the breath, and breath work, conscious connected style breath work, where you have these deep therapeutic experiences. That led me into more cold therapy. And then I kind of also started to learn a little bit more about different ways of breathing as well. And when a real struggle hit in my life, my primary relationship started to break down in the middle of COVID, which later led to us separating. I used these tools basically to help me to survive, to help me to get through that process, to try and still be the best version of myself in the middle of all that. And to this day, still continue to learn and use those practices really to sometimes just get through the day. Sometimes it's to optimize everything, but sometimes it's just literally to get past the morning. I always know that the day doesn't really start for me unless I go in the tank, go into the cold. And that's just me. It's not like that for everybody, but for me, once I go in that cold, that's it. The day begins. I reset. I get a complete reset. Whatever cloud might have been hanging over me, that is gone. It's imperative for me really to do that. I would say 99% of the time is to have a daily bath in the morning. So yeah, that's a little bit about what led me to where I am now. And I'm super grateful for it.
And so for you, like you said there, it's like imperative to get in the cold water. And part of me shivered when I heard that. I was like, oh God, every single morning. And I wonder, I think the first question that's come to me is when you're about to go in, what's some of the mental narrative that you find is kind of coming up? And, is there an inner critic telling you about why you shouldn't? Is there a voice telling you that this is silly, that you don't need to do it today? Or I imagine there was a point where maybe that was very loud and maybe that's a bit more quiet now, but I'm really interested in that because that's something when I speak to people about cold water therapy and getting in cold tanks, it's that's really alive for them. Oh God, the thoughts that come up, the resistance.
Yeah, definitely. The resistance is real for me. Even having done it thousands of times now, there's a resistance. There's a physical and a mental resistance. I can feel it in my body. So, there's a level of maybe anxiety around it. There's the voice often tells me I haven't got time. So that's my get out. You haven't got time. Yeah, I haven't got time. You maybe don't do it today. You haven't got time. But by going through the process of doing it, I guess every day I prove to myself that I am driving the ship, like the real me. It's not the voices. It's not the anxiety. So every time that I do it, I'm like, right, okay, I'm in charge. It's me that decides what we do today. But yeah, for me, I wouldn't say it never gets easier, but it does. Some days are easier than others, but it's never easy. Not for me anyway. It's not something that I am like, yeah, can't wait to get in the cold. I can't wait until I've been in the cold. That's for sure, because I know the result. I know the result of going in the cold. But every day I stand in that tank, up to my knees, and I have to override the do not sit down, do not sit down, do not sit down. And I'm just going to sit down, and I sit down in the tank. And then, almost instantly then it's job done. As soon as I get down to my neck, it's job done. And I've won. So win one of the day usually.
And it's interesting you put it I'm that message to tell yourself that I'm the captain of this ship, because it's, so much of our life is spent feeling like we're not really in control. And we can get into the philosophy of do we have control or not, but especially with our minds and our own actions, it's quite a powerful message to send yourself first thing in the morning. It's I'm in control. I can overcome these thoughts, these ideas that I know are nonsensical. I can do this with this slightly hard thing or very hard thing every morning. It's a really powerful message to give yourself every day.
Yeah. I guess it's proven to yourself that there is something great on the other side of fear, like every day. Just a constant reminder that, yeah, you might feel some fear, but on the other side of that fear, there's joy, or excitement or achievement or whatever it is. So, yeah. And I feel that fear, it's not about not feeling the fear. It's about feeling it and doing it anyway.
And that's powerful, because I think in I work a lot in the realm of people in dating and relationship, and the most common thing that people tell me that's holding them back in life is fear. The most common thing across the board, whether it's I'm speaking to a guy who is wanting to start a business and leave his job, or he's wanting to express himself to his partner, or he's wanting to go out on more dates, whatever it is, the most common thing that's standing in the way for people is fear. And I wonder, from your experience of working with so many people, because I know you do big community gatherings and so forth around the cold water, if you see how people have described the trend in their own life of them being able to tackle fear better through tackling the cold water.
Yeah, definitely, because on that micro level, you're proven to yourself physically as well as like cognitively. You're proven to yourself that that you can feel resistance or fear or worry, and still do something anyway, and feel great after it. And in the middle of it, you can potentially also even feel a sense of connection with. Sometimes it might be another person, sometimes it might be nature, it might be yourself, and it's a real metaphor for life, in the sense that quite often in the middle of our struggles, I don't know about you, but certainly for me, it's that loneliness that I feel like in the middle of a struggle. There's that sense of I am alone. It's just me. And that isn't true, is it? Like the vast majority of time, that isn't true. There's always others. There's always an opportunity for connection. We just make that decision to maybe disconnect for that sense of whatever reason that we might do it, to feel safe, or we might have done it in the past. But going in the cold, particularly in groups or just with another person, just like with one other person, we can prove to ourselves, to our system, that we can move through a struggle and a difficult circumstances and a stressful circumstances, and come out the other side in connection, connection with others, with ourselves, with our breath. And for me, that's step one. It's not like step one for somebody to go into the cold is usually as a solo traveler. It's like, with just say me or another facilitator, let's just keep this really simple, because everything else is just more of a distraction. Let's keep it really simple. Let's connect with our breath. So let's connect with the breath, connect with yourself, move into the water. And then if they feel able to, then to connect with me. So then there can be a complete rewiring then in that moment of, I can be in a struggle and maybe feel some joy and connect with another human being whilst I'm in the middle of the shit, whilst I'm in the middle of the storm. And I think that can be really unfamiliar for most of us, that is possible. That's even possible for us to do difficult things. Most of the people that come to our dips and the community are often people who maybe lacking confidence sometimes, or struggle with belief in themselves, and it's possible to very easily disprove all of that just by going into a cold lake. And people that maybe I can't swim, or there's all these different things going on for them, and for whatever reason they've decided to do that for themselves, or maybe for a friend, and disproved all of that bullshit, all of those patterns, all of those systems that they've maybe been handed. And yeah, it doesn't change everything in an instant, but when we do things like this consistently, then eventually we just change change the pattern. That's what I've witnessed anyway, and that can happen in a very short space of time. 3 or 4 sessions with somebody consciously going into cold water. There's many different ways that we can do all these different things, and consciously choosing to like cold water meditation is how I perceive it. In connection with other is the optimal way to really see a shift in a person's belief system, I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and hearing you say that, I can really, now I'm like painting a picture, because I kind of hadn't thought about the connection part. Like, I thought about, you're with somebody, but if you're somebody who is like low on confidence, or you're feeling like, you're not capable, as you said, often we feel alone in that. Like, I feel alone in my incapability, in my aloneness, in my lack of confidence, because we look around and see everyone else being so confident and so wonderful, right? It's very easy for us to look out that way. But I imagine then when they come to the cold water and they say it's just the two of you and them, and they see you maybe feel a little bit of like apprehension about getting in, maybe they see you being like, oh, okay, got to ready myself for this. Almost that comes of, first of all, surprise, as if like, oh, wait a minute, he feels the same as me. Oh, okay, he does this, he can do this, he does this every day. And the person might be like, okay, all right, I can, I'm not sure if I can do this. And you bring them in. And then there's that moment where maybe they dip down to kind of neck level, and, the breathing starts to get maybe slightly panicked, but it starts to slow down, and they've overcome what they believed they could do in this small moment. They've overcome what they believe they can do. And they also simultaneously experience, or kind of a second time, is like, I'm not alone. I'm with this person. We're in this together. We're experiencing this experience here of the cold water exactly the same. And it really, why that feels so really almost profound to me, or is profound, is that these are kind of the things that really affect our kind of mental health and our belief and our capability about ourselves. It's like, I feel like I'm defective in some way and I can't get over that. There's nothing I can do to change that. And I feel like I'm alone. But then when we, as you're saying with the dips, it's like you bring in these two things. It's like, oh, I'm capable. I can get over things. I can do this hard thing. I've surprised myself. Plus the connection is, and like that's a really powerful cocktail to like really shift our kind of brain chemistry and our thoughts and beliefs about ourselves, like who we are and what, we can bring to the world and how we can impact our lives.
Yeah, absolutely beautifully put. And what lands there for me is the correction is in the connection. So it's through through the connection that we find correction to those mistaken beliefs or patterns. It's nearly always in relationship where we really learn the most and have the opportunity to grow and change. Because usually that's what fucked us up in the first place. It was some sort of relationship that put it there in the first place, and that's the only way to unravel it is back in relationship.
Yeah. So like it's a relational, most of our wounding comes from some sort of level of relational moments, whether that's through parents and childhood, or that's through past partners and lovers. So this is like a it's a healing process for people to be in the water, overcoming adversity while being in connection and experiencing themselves in a new way, like they're experiencing their being in a new light.
Yeah, totally.
And out of interest, what's one of the, and this sounds like a really podcast-y question, what's one of the really big transformations that you've observed, like where you kind of seen someone, you maybe worked with them for a little while, or you've seen them come to your dips and you've really seen the water, the cold water, really transform them or bring more out of them than that you saw when you first met them?
Yeah, I mean, there's been many, but I guess one that stands out for me without giving any names is that there was a particular guy who I work with a charity called Tom Harrison House and the Bridge House Project, and they take care of ex-servicemen and women who are moving through a rehabilitation program. Many of them struggle with some form of PTSD, and most of them, if not all of them, have some level of addiction to drugs and alcohol. And there's one particular guy that came, and he really struggled with even eye contact. So I think I worked with him over 2 or 3 sessions, and from the first session, he could see he was really struggling with the water and the cold. But then it was just like a gradual unfolding after proving that he could do it the first time. The second time there's still a little bit of apprehension, but there was you could see there was more confidence, more light in him, more light, I would say. And then the third time he was like, let's get in that water. He'd come for the water. He was like, it's just about getting in that water. And he started, you could see the confidence and the strength and the light. That was just waiting to be seen again, I guess. And many similar stories to that, particularly with this group, but also in the community of dips at the lake, where you'll get a lady that maybe comes down and terrified of water, terrified of the cold, totally apprehensive, and they come 4-5 times, and then they are guiding other people into the water, and that is the most special thing for me. It's like this person over a fairly short period of time has gone from somebody that was struggling with the cold, with their ability to control the breath, and now they're taking somebody else's hand and they're calming their nervous system. So they've now got so much more control over their own nervous system that they're then able to support somebody else and in their process. And then that person that they're helping will go on to support somebody else, and that's the ripple effect, I guess. And that's super special to see. At those types of events.
Oh, beautiful. It's like they experience, they go through their own, rebirth, they see the fear, they have to tackle the fear. They with the guy you're speaking of there, and kind of imagining that it's like a fear around connection. The eye contact is, one of the really simple ways we connect is like feeling that connection isn't safe. And him going through this process of experiencing that he is capable of more, but also that connection is safe. It's safe to be in connection with other people. The world is a safer place. Maybe he experienced the world as a safer place just from these dips with you and the other men and women.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's just fostering that safety, I guess, and also respecting that everybody's ready for that when they're ready for it, so just everybody being at their own stage on that journey. And some people aren't ready for eye contact, particularly when they're sat in an ice bath, but others are, and you're just offering that opportunity and having that, opening that doorway, and when they're ready they walk through it. And as you well know, the more that you get to work with somebody, the more of those opportunities are able to present, and the more doorways that you can open, just being a guide, I guess, and not, just being the facilitator to that, and knowing that people will walk through those doors when they're ready. And it's not mine or your responsibility to push them through the doors. And actually, when they do walk through the doors, it's got little to do with us. It's got very little to do with us. We're just providing a space, and what we deem as safety. Providing something that we deem as safety, that hopefully that they will receive as safety, I guess. Yeah.
And it's interesting you use the terms like we deem as safety is like, something I used to say a lot was, I'll create safe spaces. But I think I've come to realize more and more is that I can create a safe that I feel is safe, or that I can create as safe a space as possible for people. And we can't guarantee, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, I can't guarantee that someone else will experience safety in themselves, because there's also like there's some of the responsibility of safety lies in their internal world, which we can only so much influence.
Yeah, totally. We just don't know what goes on in that internal world for each one of us, do we? So, like you say, all we can do is do our best to provide what we deem as safety, and inquire as to what they might, when we can, inquire as what they might experience as safety, and just keep checking in with people and learning. It's harder to do that in a bigger group setting. Well, that's when you foster a culture, isn't it? In the bigger group setting, you've fostered a culture that ideally creates its own safety through the boundaries and communication networks that you put in place within that group. Often even with the bigger groups, sometimes we get 40 or 50 people at the lake, and I may still do a little share, still give some people the opportunity to express themselves. And then obviously as the groups are smaller, when we work with smaller groups, then that can be even more intimate, and then everybody gets the opportunity to share. And making sure that we create those safe systems of confidentiality and respect that sometimes it can feel a little bit clinical, but I think it's super important, isn't it, to have those things in place, because it does tend to foster safety, and safety fosters safety. So, it grows. It's got its own little organism, hasn't it, safety, that it just grows. And what might not feel safe for somebody, if we respect that and give them the opportunity to maybe express maybe why they don't feel safe, or what might feel safe for them, and inquire instead of like telling them that this is a safe environment, like inquire on what is going on for you, then we get to learn as well. We get to learn. They get to maybe have a different experience than what they've had previously. So, yeah.
And then I imagine also, like, for that person who expresses that they lack safety, and to have that expression respected and understood and listened to, that might just be the very thing they need to feel safe, is that to know that their lack of safety is respected, it's not questioned, it's not judged, it's not critiqued, they're not told they're wrong. It's just like, okay, cool, you don't feel safe, you understand, cool. And then being part of a group of people who do feel safe, in listening to them, in being with them, can have a drastic shift on how safe they feel. Maybe not the first time, but the second time, the third time after they come, they start to experience it's like, oh, my ideas about what safety, the lack of safety are, can I say this? They may come to realize that it's nothing to do with the group. It's nothing to do with the setting. It's just how they feel about themselves in the setting. They come to experience that setting as being safe over time.
Yeah. So.
And there's a lot in the wellness media. I feel like, sometimes I feel in this weird bubble of like men's work and embodiment and breath and cold water and sauna and, all this stuff that's like, been going around for a lot. But I see sometimes it kind of creeps into the general media, right? And that, we in the UK, and I think across the world in general, we're really dealing with a real kind of crisis when it comes to mental health. In particular with men, but it's not actually solely particular to men. But do you see the therapies of, cold water, of sauna, of breath as being really vital tools in our ability to bring our mental health into a place that we feel happy with, individually and as a culture as well?
I certainly do, yeah. I mean, anything that helps us to feel more present in the now and safe in our bodies is a tool that is going to be useful for somebody at some point. It doesn't mean that cold water and or sauna is for everybody, but it's definitely for somebody, if that makes sense. Choosing the unfamiliar places, I guess, is where we get the most growth and opportunity. So if you find it easy to go in an ice bath every day, then maybe there's something to learn from the heat, or maybe there's something to learn from movement. But there's a lot of buzzwords, isn't there, around the cold and the sauna and breathwork, and I think there's a good reason for that, because there's so much in it, but it isn't as clear as what it may seem. These things they're not the solution; they're just part of the solution, I guess. And we will all have our own perfect balance of all those different things. And some of them are bigger rocks than others. And as important as I believe the cold and sauna is, I think movement is and exercise is probably the biggest rock, certainly for me. But it's a balance. It's a balance of all the things, and we're ever changing beings, aren't we? So sometimes it's more of one, sometimes it's more of another. We've got to balance that. We've got to balance those tools out as to what we need and when. And that means intuition. That means working on your intuition. So the more you work on your intuition, the more you know yourself, the more you know your body, the more you can roll and flow with those different tools of what you need. And when you're out of balance, and when you're in balance, when you're probably never in balance, we're only ever balancing, aren't we? But yeah, just trying to find that equilibrium. But yeah, the short answer is yes. I think that the integral, the things that we've had that we've never realized that we needed until we've taken them away from society and culture, and now we're getting sick, and now we realize that we need them. So we're having to be more conscious about doing these things. Whereas in the past, we would have just done them anyway. We would have exercised regularly. We would have we would have been affected by cold and extreme heat, depending where we were in the world. The way that we lived. Now we've got to actively seek it out, which is fine. We live in a modern world. We've got central heating, we've got houses, and all those great things that we have, and there's positive things. There's a positive side to that, but there's also a negative impact that it has upon us. So and I think we're in an era of really understanding that on a much more microscopic level. There's science behind it. There's science behind the need for connection and community and cold and hot, and there's now proof. If you need proof and if you need numbers, then it now exists. So, yeah.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of studies, and I've read bits and pieces about the cold helping with mood, stress levels, stress reduction, depression, anxiety. I've definitely seen the odd Instagram post from someone who's like, they got off their anti-anxiety meds, or they got off their antidepressant meds, and it's because of using the cold and breath and sauna, and using those things to really come home to themselves, get out of the mind a bit, get more present, and create that balance, that harmony that you speak of. The science is now very strong, and it is interesting to think that these age-old things, right? Like when I think of you think of cold, my girlfriend's Swedish, right? So when I first went to her parents' house, this was quite funny. When was it? I can't remember. It might have been the back end of an August or September in 2020, maybe. Yeah, I think it's 2020. And her dad has a sauna at home. In their summer house, there's a sauna there. And getting in cold lakes and cold water is normal for them. It's like they have a bit of a family tradition in the summer, and I think in the winter sometimes as well. It's like they live by the sea, so they go and dip in the sea, and it's cold, man. It's chilly out there in that cold snow. And it's like, this is something people have been doing in parts of the world for, thousands upon thousands of years. You've got the ancient cultures that come out of, North America, South America, sweat lodges. These are things that were used to find wisdom and clarity and purpose in long before, the electricity was found. And they were finding then that there was like a deep spiritual aspect to these traditions and these practices. And it's interesting that we've gone all the way back to these times for the wisdom of our own bodies. You add in breathwork to that, and people up in Tibetan monks have been doing breathwork for God knows how long to help with dealing with the cold or to feel more mentally clear. And as you said, it's almost like our modern world takes us away from clarity, takes us away from presence, takes us away from embodiment. And we're having to go back into the past and grab tools from there to help us kind of come back to our, natural state of being.
Yeah. It's chosen adversity, isn't it? I guess conscious adversity. Yeah.
Yeah. Conscious adversity. And the reason why that really leaps out is, was I reading something recently? I feel like I was reading something recently. It was talking about this. It's like the narrative. That's it. So I'm always talking about this inside of my coaching work, of like the power of story. That as human beings, we're all about the story that we tell ourselves. When it comes from trauma, it's about the story that we tell ourselves, or about the events that occur in our lives. And the conscious adversity is empowering as an experience for us, because we choose to get into some cold water and go, okay, I'm getting this freezing cold water where I have to saw a little hole in the ice to get in. But I'm in control. It's a bit like what you said earlier. It's like, I'm the captain of this ship. And like that conscious adversity is it's not just character building, because it's deeper than that. There's like physiological benefits to resilience and all sorts, but it's also just really good for the mind to say, like, to tell ourselves, and as we touched on before, is like, I can deal with, I'm powerful. I can deal with it. I can deal with difficult things and come out the other side a better human being.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And I know you run longer experiences, not just dips you do with people. You run retreats as well, like multi-day retreats. I know you run some with your partner as well, Rebecca. And I'm really interested, because I know she does embodiment work. And I'm really interested how you weave in all these different aspects of the cold, maybe some of the heat, the breath, the embodiment, and how that kind of lands with people in over a multi-day experience.
I mean, it all just leads really to the same result, which is presence, and presence being that feeling of being in the moment, in the now. Whether it be through connection with each other as humans, listening, the cold, the heat, movement. Ultimately, it's all leading to that same place. So the more time you get with somebody or with a group, I guess, the more you get to feel of that, and sometimes, and that's what I think is great about the cold, actually, because you don't necessarily need that long with somebody. Quite often, most of the time, that cold opens an instant window to presence. It's like they're instantly in that moment without any choice. For some people, it might only be a fraction of a moment, but for others, it can be for a couple of minutes. And you have to practice a lot of meditation to be able to be fully present for a couple of minutes without having anything else in your mind, in your thoughts, in your physicality. And that happens often with cold. particularly when it's facilitated a certain way. So yeah, it's the longer you get with somebody, the more opportunities that there is. But you don't always need that long. Sometimes you only need an hour, half an hour. It depends upon the person. It depends upon the walls, and I guess the depth in which you wish to go. But for me, the cold is a great leader into that, because once you've experienced, almost like been handed, here is what presence feels like, here is where it is, here is where it lives. It can be easier to find your way back to it in the other experiences and the other modalities. Because we can't sit in a cold water tank all day, every day. And some people can't even get in a cold water tank every day, So what can they do that will help to support them to find that presence? And that is aside from all the other benefits that it brings. That's just one aspect of it, but it's just one really big part of how I use it. It's certainly how we would use it in a retreat space. It's a lot more than boosting your norepinephrine and getting however many times your dopamine. It's a lot more than that. So yeah, does that answer your question? I'm not sure. I got off of the time.
Yeah. And I'm thinking too, like, when we had this experience of presence, what does that open up for us? As people, what do you see that starts to open up for people when they start to experience themselves as present, the present moment? What starts to maybe come through from them or fall away?
Quite often, from what I've witnessed, particularly in those that haven't maybe experienced presence for a long time, there's usually an expression of emotion. There's usually something that surfaces, and that can be, some tears, some sadness, some grief, some anger, some joy, and you see that surface, and sometimes the person can be quite surprised. It can be unexpected, particularly if they've not necessarily felt that emotion for a little while. And then quite often beyond that, there is peace, clarity, serenity. So yeah, that's what I've witnessed in others, certainly. And even in myself still now, sometimes when things have maybe been a little bit tough for a little while, and I maybe get into the cold, or have a particularly strong sauna experience, then similar, it can open a little doorway to really be in the moment. And when we're really in the moment, we get to feel our feelings, because our feelings only exist in the now. They don't exist in the past or the future. So when we hit the now, then quite often we get a little bit of a surge of that feeling that we've maybe been trying to escape a little bit, or unable to feel or touch for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. And possibly even being completely unaware of that there was something there, and then when you bring in the breath work, this must be a really powerful dynamic, because my experience of my first experience of breathwork, which was probably going back 2018, I think, the first time I did a breathwork session, because that really can, especially with the conscious connected breath, that can really open us up to things, emotion, and even thoughts have been kind of stuck in the body for a long time that haven't had space to kind of move through us and come out.
Yeah, totally. The breath is particularly used in the way that you're talking about. Is also super powerful to allow us to access feelings and energy, and that maybe, like you say, we weren't aware of. And yeah, again, seeing some super magical things, as I'm sure you have, through those kinds of breathwork experiences.
And it's just like thinking of the retreat, we've got some breath, and we've got some sauna, and we've got some cold water, we've got some movement. It must really be a wonderful cocktail for people to meet a deeper layer of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody gets something different from the experiences, and I guess that would be a good way of explaining what kind of experience that somebody might have. Yeah, a deeper layer, a new version. We experience 1,000 deaths in our lifetime, don't we, of our own, and equally in relationship. In the other, it's that constant readjustment, isn't it, through all of those deaths, and same. In having that experience of a retreat where we nourish ourselves to that level, then there is a birth and a death, which we're shedding those layers, aren't we, and exposing those new layers. So it's really lovely to see people's faces, isn't it, at the end of those experiences, and the way that they carry themselves. And it's just, there can often be such a seismic shift in the energy in a room and in people's faces and eyes. So blessed.
Because I imagine a lot of people come to the retreats thinking, I'm going to get some cold water, some breath in, and they're thinking about like the performance level and like, the good hormones and the good internal drugs that are created, and they're looking at it very much from maybe like a sports and endurance point of view, and maybe they're looking at the embodiment as like it's like, I guess it's kind of exercise. and I can imagine then those people coming, because I've worked with some men who are like that, are very like performance driven individuals in life, and they've been doing, creating, and they haven't really spent much time in their lives kind of coming into presence. Everything they do is it's to move forward to the next thing. And I imagine they come to your retreat, and I imagine it's not super sped up, and they get to experience these possible experiences of like being in the cold and really meeting this presence, and then being in breathwork and maybe cracking open a bit. It must be quite a really an eye-opening experience for them about what else is possible in life.
Yeah, definitely. And it can also be quite a vulnerable experience for people, and they can often feel quite raw from that, and we need to be really tender with that, and where we can offer, support, I guess, around that, because you're really opening people up and they're exposing maybe some of those old wounds. It can feel very raw. It can have all this different terminology, ego backlash, a retreat hangover kind of a thing. And it's difficult sometimes to explain to somebody that is good. It's good. It's good that you feel like this. This is what growth feels like. It's tough. It's tough. You asked for growth. This is what growth feels like. It's this is why you came. This is what you paid for or asked for, I guess. But it's also being really conscious that can be quite challenging for people sometimes, and people can maybe sometimes go away and feel quite raw, quite exposed, and that's something that I'm always working on, and conscious that we're very busy people, and but how important that aftercare is in holding space. Particularly the deeper that you go with people, the more important it is to be able to hold that for them, for a bit of time, offer with other offerings, or with just maybe having a little community set up afterwards. But yeah, I mean, I guess that highlights it more with men, because men historically were not as good at talking and communicating. So when a man leaves a retreat, he may not have a resource outside of that retreat to talk about the things that happened for him in that retreat, and the feelings that he's now experiencing in this new version of him. So I think it's super important that we constantly try and find build the communities, not just the retreats and the days. It's like, it's the community, so that the community can take care of itself as well. And that might just be 5 people. It might be, just a very small group of people as part of that community. But yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. It's like the integration, isn't it? It's that integration piece where we have a large experience, or we have a deep experience, or we have a connected experience. And it's so easy just to kind of leave, and we go out into our lives again. And we look at that experience, and we might even start to feel like a little bit of regret. Like you said, like the retreat hangover. It's like, oh, how did I show up? And I was feeling super joyful, or I was, feeling really sad and opened up about things that have happened to me. And we left feeling like, oh, should I have really said all that stuff? Maybe people have judged me and so forth. And I really love what you said about, tending to people afterwards, because I've experienced a lot of really amazing retreats, and the retreat happens and then you're gone, you're off, you're back into life again. And having that community, having that support with integration is so important, because it keeps people in the kind of us, it keeps people in the energy of what they experienced. And it kind of reinforces that safety of like, what I showed up with is acceptable, is lovable, is welcomed by people. And we get to, my experience is that when that happens, we don't have to just make that a one-off experience that we did one time. We can start integrating that into a life as like a way that we kind of want to be. I mean, I was thinking back to, I ran a workshop on Saturday with my partner also, and a day later, she was like, we should do like an integration call for people, like a week. So we've like set up a call for all the people that are there. And you're like, oh yeah, because for some people, they've had a really big experience. They felt like really open, and they felt really vulnerable, and they heard things that they didn't think were true. And it's like to just leave them out in the wilderness, in the world, to go back to their lives without just giving them another touch of base. I feel this feels really responsible for them, their lives, their own growth, to kind of provide that for them.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great thing to do. Did you do it? Did you do that integration call?
No, it's coming up in a few days. Sunday. Yeah, Sunday. It's coming up in a few days because, I've just had a few retreat experiences. I said that where you kind of left and that was it, and you didn't really hear much else. And maybe there were some bits online, like a couple of videos to watch, but not really any kind of contact again. And it's so easy to go back to your life and almost feel a bit alone, post retreat experience. You're like, oh, I had this experience. This is great. Can I share this with anyone? Like you said about the man that might go home and has no one. It's like, is there anyone in my life that can understand what I've just been through, who won't judge me, who won't be critical or sarcastic or whatever it may be, who will just listen openly and support me in what I have experienced.
Yeah, nice.
And as we're on this topic of community, you've really built our community around the water. What do you think are some of the key aspects of building a community, actually, for anyone who's listening to this who is maybe a practitioner in some way and they're wanting to kind of build our community? Because I've seen you do a really beautiful job of doing this over the last few years.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that, because I guess certainly when I started out, I didn't really know how to build a community, and I guess I'm still learning now what it means to be part of a community, to create a culture that is nourishing within a community. And I don't really know how to answer that one, to be honest with you, because it's something that I certainly wouldn't profess to be an expert on. But I guess I have got some experience of building a beautiful community. I guess if you're going to be the person to start that community, then build it for you. I guess that's what I would say. That's what kind of comes comes through is build it for you in the beginning, from what you know as being your key values, your most important values of the things that around the things that you're passionate about, that you love, and yeah, just believe in what you're doing, and yeah, the right people will align with what it is. If you've got if you've got a true belief in what you're doing, and a true belief in a community, and you will inevitably find those that align with you and your beliefs, and that might be few, it might be many. I guess my reason for I always was looking for a community, and then I guess I realized that I could start a community, and yeah, that's what we have now, in digital form and in in-person form, which is, yeah, I feel super lucky to be a part of, and humbled really that it's not my community, it's everybody's community, and just feel humbled to be a little part of that, as an instigator, I guess, and just following a wave that started for many of us in the middle of a pandemic. So yeah,
that whole thing, eh?
Yeah.
And how does it feel for you to kind of lead that community? To be a community leader, is that a role that you step into easily and feel comfortable with, or is it something that's you feel that maybe is not as natural for you?
I wouldn't say I feel comfortable, and I wouldn't say it was natural, no. But I also learned from a mentor of mine about how leading a community can also be quite a lonely place. So really what we all need is to be within a community with, and I guess that's in a traditional sense of what leadership looks like. Yeah. So I'm still learning how to maybe, that community is full of leaders, it's full of leaders, and we all lead in our different ways. Some might lead from the front, some might lead from the back. And yeah, I need to be part of the community so that I can lean on the community when I might need to, and be nourished from the community when I don't need to. So if I position myself in some way above the community, which is what I traditionally might see leadership as somebody separate, so I'm still trying to embody and understand what community leadership and community leaders can be and can look like from within a community, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And what I'm hearing is it's not this kind of hierarchical leadership that we kind of grew up through schooling and seeing companies. It's more of a flat structure of leadership, where, like you said, there's leaders within the community that are doing their bit to lead as well. It's not all responsibility and all decisions. It's not what's it called? It's not a words escape me. It's not you decreeing all the rules and how things must be and when things must happen. It's more of a collective.
Yeah, absolutely. And some will do more than others, and that's also fine, I guess. But I guess even this conversation and this awareness of this in itself is a form of leadership, isn't it? Because it's a way of bringing a culture, and that's what I feel is the most important part. And also as a business owner, and with employees, is the most important part of that. What I believe is culture. It's building the culture because then the community can lead itself in many ways once you've created the culture. So yeah, it's the same in retreats. It's the same in retreats. We create the culture early on in the retreat to help to get the most out of people, I guess. So yeah, I guess maybe light touch leadership, yeah, is what kind of makes the most sense to me. Yeah.
Got it. What was the question there? Was in my mind. I guess the question I was thinking around the leadership was like, is there for you this kind of God, I'm terrible with words today. Is there an apprehension about having like the more traditional style of leadership, just due to your own experiences of that style of leadership?
Yeah, I would say so. So, coming from a family with a much more traditional style of leadership, from my father, and also he also revered leadership as well. So yeah, I'm very conscious of my own maybe experiences of leadership and how that I'm trying to understand where some of my beliefs and some of my beliefs and feelings around leadership, were they rooted? Are they rooted in trauma and patterning, or are they rooted in this is how I really believe them to be? And I mean, I guess that's the same with many things. It's certainly that way in parenting. So we talk about leadership and parenting. It's this is what we are as parents, aren't we? So it's a constant ask of myself, like, where is this coming from? Is this coming from my authentic self, or is this coming from a version of me that is only just about the same age as this little boy that I'm trying to take care of? And 8-year-olds don't parent 8-year-olds very well, so so
yeah. And it's interesting you say that, is because I was thinking this morning, I was like, in one of my programs, I do some father wound stuff with the guys, and it actually comes in and around the leadership part of the program. Because what I've saw in myself, and I've seen in many men, is that what we do, and all people, but I generally work with men, is we will, like, there'll be something. So, say for instance, I use fathering as an example. If our fathers were very dictatorial, for instance, and very dominating, we will often really move away from anything that feels like dominance, assertiveness, and telling people what to do. We'll just like, nope. Especially if we've had a bad experience of it, we'll move away from that. It's just as you're describing there, because we see it, and that becomes a pattern of like, I want to abdicate leadership. I don't want to lead. I don't want to tell people what to do. I don't want to organize. I don't want to lead, because that in some way we see that as being toxic and harmful. So we move away from it. And then we create our lives in a way that means we never have to go near those sorts of traits and feelings and experiences. And as I'm hearing you say there, is that what you've noticed for yourself is like, the question that we must all keep asking ourselves, and the question I ask myself even as I become a father, is like, okay, who do I want to be? And why am I choosing to be this way? Am I choosing to be this way because this is authentically like how I express myself? Or is it because I'm moving away from avoiding being like something that I think is wrong and bad? And I find there's a really interesting exploration around all the things that I think are wrong and bad. What about those would be nourishing to my life, my leadership, my relationship, my business? and how can I bring those into my life, into myself in a way that isn't harmful. So we might look at, say, being dominating, but assertiveness and dominating can actually be quite close cousins. So it's like, okay, how can I bring being assertive into my life, into my relationship, into my business, and bring it in a way that actually is nourishing to any of those areas and my life? Because it's better to do that. It's important to do that work instead of just throwing the baby out with the bathwater, as they say.
Yeah, totally. So what I hear you saying is that recognition, isn't it, of the things that are driving us and the things that we choose to drive, I guess. And knowing ourselves well enough to know when we're in one seat or the other, I guess. And I think what comes through for me is that recognition that it's always somewhere in the middle. It's never the opposite to what maybe the things that we're trying to run away from, maybe the way that, like, dictatorial parenting. It's never the polar. It's always somewhere in the middle, because the polar just creates the same loop. Somewhere back in the loop, it's going to get back to dictatorial, and then it'll be the opposite to dictatorial, and then it's always somewhere in the middle, because somewhere in the middle is the chosen place, isn't it? It's the conscious place. It's the real you. It's the decision made in the now for what it works in that moment. The more conscious you become, the more aware you become of all these different things and all these different choices that we make on a daily basis, from what we eat to how we sleep to how we interact with each other. And it's finding a way to choose our actions instead of our actions choosing us, and all of those different things. And certainly, thank you for highlighting that in me. Is that dictatorial, not wanting to be that dictator, but wanting to be assertive, and finding that subtle balance, and noticing how that feels, I guess, to be assertive, and to believe that that's okay as well. It's okay to be assertive. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And before we wrap up, I thought I'd love to ask a question from one not so seasoned to be father to a seasoned father. What one piece of advice would you give to me in my impending journey into fatherhood?
Wow, what piece of advice? Trust yourself, I guess. Trust that, just trust your own love for your child, that will lead you and along the way to it's a difficult one, that. Trust. That child will show you how to parent that child, I guess. That has been my experience. And trust you and trust them on the process of learning together, of that mutual experience of being parent and child. That's it. I guess that's it. That's it. That's it. It's it's my little bit of wisdom.
No, I get it. It really, I feel like I get it intellectually. I get it. I think maybe you asked me in a year, and I probably will have a much deeper embodied experience of what you say.
And I mean, even those early years, I guess, of certainly my experience of being a dad, of those first couple of years, it's a lot about mum. It's a lot about mum and baby. And it's maybe as they start to get a little bit older that I started to feel like I was more involved, and you have more of an influence then of the whole family dynamic. And it's wonderful having a baby around. It is wonderful having a baby around. But it's as they get a little bit older, I found that's when I felt that I had more of a place in being more influential, I guess, on in the parenting of my boy anyway. So.
Beautiful. Oh, thank you, Ryan. Thank you for that. That impromptu, because there was no. I gave you no warning about that question. And I'd love you to tell the listeners like where they can find you, where they can find your retreats, what retreats and workshops and day bits and pieces you have coming up as well.
Yeah, so you can find us on Instagram, Urban Ice Tribe. You can find our website, www.urbanicetribe.com, and we have monthly community dips up here in the Northwest. This is where we're based, just on the outskirts of Wigan, between Liverpool and Manchester. Like I say, every month we have our community dips. We've also still mapping out our year of retreats and festivals that we're going to be doing. We will be in London again in May. The exact date and venue escapes me right now. At Slevin, the gym is called Slevin. We're doing a collaboration in May, and yeah, we're hoping to do multiple events this year. We're just waiting for final confirmation on venues and places. Quite a few little pop-up events are on the cards in town centres and festivals, where we're going to be bringing the tanks and the sauna and giving people an opportunity to have a little bit of hot and cold nourishment. So I'm rubbish with my diary, by the way, as you can tell. So
I know the feeling.
Yeah.
And I'll also add for listeners that also on the website, you can buy the tanks, and you have a lot of really beautiful tanks, different types of tanks, small tanks, big tanks, multiple people tanks. And also, because I got to experience the sauna as well, we had when we all met up, a few of us, we had the pop-up sauna, which was I came back and telling also, I was like, this thing's amazing. Like, if we could have some space, like we should get one of these.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, they're a really great addition to the kit. So it just pops up anywhere, and just a beautiful wood burning stove, so you got the lovely smells and the heat. So yeah, we'll be taking those to lots of events this year, and hopefully giving people an opportunity to give them a try. So yeah, that's all on the website. Chiller systems, it's all good stuff, and yeah, good to speak to anybody that's got any questions too.
Awesome. Oh, thank you, brother. Thank you for such a wonderful conversation that we through all sorts of topics, all sorts of aspects of our health, our mental, our emotional, our spiritual health. And listeners, if you've enjoyed the episode, let us know. It's always beautiful to hear from people, to hear what they've taken from the episode, what they've learned, what they've able to maybe action in their lives. Maybe you hear this and you think about, jumping in, getting your own cold water tank, or you think about taking cold showers, or whatever it may be, But I'm sure we would both love to hear from you.
Sure would.
And as we come to the episode, I'd just love to say is, thank you to Ryan, thank you to listeners, and ciao. I want to say a big thank you for listening. It's people like yourself that really help get the podcast out into the world. Especially if you're often sharing the episodes and the podcast with people that you feel just could do with listening, right? Can see a different way of being a man, maybe a different way of having dating lives and intimacy and relationships. So I want to say a big thank you. And if maybe after listening to this episode, you think, oh, there's someone actually who could really do with this, please share it with them. Share the love. I'm really, really grateful. And if, you want to get in contact with me for any questions, or you want to talk about coaching or any working together, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram @theauthenticman_.
or you can email me hello@theauthenticman.net. Thank you very much.